Welcome to The Explainer. Listen, if you're wrapping up a business in the UAE, you need to stick around for this. We're diving into VAT deregistration, and trust me, ignoring this final step can hit your wallet hard. So, you've done all the heavy lifting, right? You've made the tough calls, paid your suppliers, said your goodbyes to the team. You can see the finish line, but wait. There's this one last hurdle, this little piece of paperwork that trips up so many people. And yep, it's all about your VAT. And look, this isn't just some boring box-ticking exercise. We're talking about a serious, critical step with the Federal Tax Authority. If you mess this up, you could be looking at some nasty penalties and legal headaches long after you thought you were done. And it could cost you this much, 10,000 dirhams. That's the potential penalty for not deregistering from VAT on time. That is a huge price to pay for what looks like a simple administrative task, don't you think? All right, let's really get into why this is such a big deal. A lot of people think that once they cancel their trade license, poof, all their VAT duties just disappear. But nope, that's not how it works at all. See, the FDA, the Federal Tax Authority, needs you to formally say, "I'm out." If you don't, you're still on their radar. You're still supposed to be filing returns. And that can lead to a whole mountain of late fees and penalties and even audit risks that can chase you down personally way after you've closed up shop. So the big question is, when does that countdown timer actually start? Well, the FDA is super clear on this, and you can't just say, "Oh, I didn't know." That's not going to fly. You get 20. Just 20 business days. That's it. From the second you stop making taxable sales, the clock is ticking. It's a really, really tight window, which means you've got to be planning for this before you even think about shutting down. Okay, and here's something you really need to get straight. There's a big difference between when you have to deregister and when you can choose to. Mandatory means it's not a choice. If you stop doing business, you have to apply. Voluntary, on the other hand, is for when your sales drop below a certain level. It's a smart move to get out from under all that paperwork. Figuring out which bucket you fall into, that's your first move. All right, let's break down the actual process. I know it might sound a bit intimidating, but honestly, it's a pretty straightforward 6-step plan to get you out of the system without any drama. Think of this as your roadmap. First, you make sure you actually qualify. Then, you pay off anything you still owe the tax man. After that, you hop online and submit the application. And here's the really important part. You have to file one last final VAT return. Once you've paid or reclaimed that final amount, you just wait for that official "you're done" confirmation. Every single one of these steps has to be done perfectly. All right, I need you to lean in for this next part, because this is probably the biggest, sneakiest trap in this whole process. It's something called deemed supply, and let me tell you, it catches so many smart people by surprise. Yeah, this quote really says it all. You get so wrapped up in all the forms and the official stuff of closing down that you completely miss this huge financial bomb just sitting right there in your asset list. So what on earth is deemed supply? Okay, in simple terms, the tax authority looks at all the stuff your business still owns when you deregister, your leftover stock, your computers, your office chairs, and they pretend you sold it all to yourself at its current market value. And because of that pretend sale, you have to pay 5% VAT on that value. Crazy, right? Let's use a real-world example to see how this can bite you. Picture this. Your company is shutting down, but you've still got a bunch of unsold products just sitting in storage. So if that leftover stock is worth, say, 50,000 dirhams, you suddenly have to find an extra 2,500 dirhams to pay to the FTA in your very last tax return. That's a nasty surprise bill at a time when cash is probably the tightest, all because you didn't see it coming. So you get that final confirmation email. Phew, it's over, right? Well, not quite. Your responsibilities as a professional don't just end there. And this is what we mean by the long tail of compliance. You legally have to hang on to all your VAT records, all of them, for at least 5 years. Why? Because the FTA can decide to audit you even after you've deregistered. So you better make sure those files are in perfect order. Okay, let's bring this all home. We're going to wrap up by looking at the things you absolutely should not do. I find that knowing the common mistakes is the best way to make sure you don't make them yourself. Just look at this table. Think of it as your motivation to get this right. Being late with your application isn't just a slap on the wrist. It's 1,000 dirhams every single month. Make a mistake on that final return, bam, that's another 3,000 dirhams. The penalties for messing this up are no joke, and they stack up quick. So, here's the bottom line. You got to avoid these common slip-ups. Don't just assume it's automatic. Don't forget about deemed supply on your assets. Be super careful with that final tax return. And please, remember, just because your business is closed doesn't mean the FTA will let you off the hook for penalties. You should really think of VAT deregistration as the final seal on your business. It's that last professional step that proves you're closing your doors cleanly and correctly. It's about protecting your reputation. So